What we're asking the governor to do is to have those items tested.
John Ramsey wants new technology to help find his daughter's murderer, saying there's some evidence that should be tested for DNA.
DNA is the answer in our case.
A man is shot by Jefferson County deputies. What we're learning about the confrontation.
He continued to fight pretty violently until he was taken into custody.
And new security measures are in place at the U.S. Supreme Court, just days after a leak shows the court is considering overturning Roe v. Wade. Plus, the Avs are back in action, hoping to avoid the penalty box in Game 2 against the Predators.
We never back down, but at the same time, we're trying to play in between the whistles and trying to stay disciplined, stay out of the box.
John Ramsey, the father of JonBenét Ramsey, wants new technology to test for DNA in the investigation into his daughter's murder. And Governor Jared Polis says the state will look into how the technology could be used to potentially help solve that case. Thanks so much for joining us for Denver 7 News at 11. I'm Jason Grenauer. JonBenét was murdered in Boulder back in 1996. Her father says he supports a petition asking the state to use genetic genealogy to find her killer. Ramsey was on CNN this morning saying there were items from the crime scene that were never tested for DNA. He says if evidence is tested, a match or similar match could show up in a public database. And police knew they had an unidentified male DNA in the days after JonBenét's murder, and to this day, it's still unidentified.
They find a similar match, not an exact match, but a similar match, and then basically create a family tree going backwards from that point. DNA is the answer in our case. I've been told that by experienced detectives. They said this is a DNA case, it'll be solved by DNA.
Now, Ramsey says the technology has been used to solve about a dozen cases across the U.S., and we've profiled several cold cases solved by using it here in Colorado recently. Now, the government doesn't have access to this type of testing, and it would have to be done through an independent lab. Now, the petition also asks for the case to be transferred from Boulder Police. Ramsey says he hasn't had any communication with Boulder PD in 3 years. A man is in a hospital after being shot during a confrontation with Jefferson County deputies. It happened at a shopping center near Wadsworth and Bowles in Littleton. Denver 7's Jessica Crawford is at the scene with what we know so far.
We're told that this all started with a man claiming that he had been followed to this location. Here's a look back at how the scene was a little bit earlier this morning. Jefferson County Sheriff's deputies tell us this all took place around midnight. They received a call from a man saying that he was being followed. But when the deputy arrived, the suspect confronted him with a knife. Deputies say the suspect was behaving very violently. A confrontation then took place and the deputy shot the suspect. That suspect was taken to a hospital and his condition is unknown right now. We did see clothing and evidence markers on the scene before officers cleared that out. Those officers telling us that they're so glad that the deputy was not injured.
This is certainly one of the many scenarios that our deputies train for, but nobody wants to use deadly force ever. But there are times when there's simply no choice, either to defend yourself or to defend somebody from the public, and that certainly appears to be what happened this morning.
And again, it appears that the scene has been cleared for now. We'll continue to update you as we learn more about the investigation. In Littleton, Jessica Crawford, Denver 7.
A former Loveland police officer could spend up to 8 years in prison or get probation for his arrest of a woman with dementia. Austin Hopp pleaded guilty to second-degree assault in March and will be sentenced this afternoon. He arrested Karen Garner in 2020 for shoplifting from a Walmart. Garner's arm was broken and her shoulder dislocated during that arrest. New measures are being taken to secure the U.S. Supreme Court just days after a draft opinion on abortion rights was leaked. And the justice who wrote that draft now canceling an appearance. Alex Perche reports from Washington.
Today, more fallout from that bombshell leak from the Supreme Court. Justice Samuel Alito has canceled an appearance at a judicial conference set to begin today. Alito, the author of that 5-4 draft opinion from February that shows a majority of the justices are poised to overturn Roe v. Wade. And overnight, fencing erected around the court as an additional security measure. Abortion rights demonstrations erupting in front of the court and across the country. This one in downtown Los Angeles Wednesday turning violent. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky saying the lack of access to legal abortion services for women could lead to increased deaths.
Those who don't may take matters into their own hands and may not get exactly the care that they need in order to do so. And I do think that lives could be at stake in that situation.
Valerie Peterson agrees. In 2015, she says she traveled from Austin, Texas to Florida for an abortion due to restrictions. She wanted her pregnancy, but says she made the decision to abort at 16 weeks when she found out her baby was diagnosed with a rare disease that usually results in stillbirths.
I was carrying the pregnancy knowing now that there was no chance of survival.
Anti-abortion advocates supportive of the leaked draft hope that more states will be emboldened to enact restrictions ahead of a final Supreme Court decision.
There's no right to kill an innocent unborn child, but there is a right to life.
As for the investigation into the leak, Chief Justice John Roberts has directed the court's marshal, Army Colonel Gail Curley, to lead the probe. Curley is a career Army lawyer who also oversees the Supreme Court Police. Alex Prochet, ABC News, Washington.
The Boulder County Sheriff's Office is looking at surveillance video to find who vandalized this church in Boulder. Someone spray painted pro-choice messages and broke glass at Sacred Heart of Mary on Tuesday night. This is the second time the church has been hit by vandals. The Sheriff's Office says the graffiti is similar to what was written on the church last September. Stocks are having a down day on Wall Street today, giving up big gains it made yesterday. The Dow tumbled 1,000 points, or nearly 3%. Right now, it's still down about 900. The sharp reversal follows the Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates by 0.5%. The Fed is raising those rates in an effort to slow inflation and try to avoid a recession. It also means you'll be paying higher rates for credit cards, loans, mortgages, and home equity lines of credit. Credit cards, adjustable rate mortgages, and home equity lines of credit will be among the first to see the increase. Payments will get bigger. You'll be paying for longer if you can't pay the balance right away. We spoke to a finance professor from DU who has this recommendation.
Now is a good time to use excess cash to pay down your home equity line of credits as well as your credit card loans before those interest rates really start to impact your budget.
Now, the Fed says more increases could happen this year. The benchmark, which is the rate that banks borrow and lend to each other, that's around 1%. Many analysts expect it could be as high as 3% by the end of the year. The rate was 2.5% in 2019 before the pandemic. Well, Americans aren't feeling optimistic about the economy. A CNN poll found the public's view of the economy is the worst it's been in a decade. 8 in 10 adults say the government isn't doing enough to fight inflation, and more than half say the Biden administration's policies are making conditions worse. Less than a quarter say economic conditions are somewhat good. That's down from close to 40% in December. And only 1/3 of Americans say things in the country are going well. That's about the same as last summer. The Biden administration wants to buy 60 million barrels of crude oil to replenish emergency oil reserves. Now, this fix will take years and will only refill about 1/3 of what's actually being released. President Biden ordered releases of oil from the reserves in an attempt to bring down gas prices. The stockpile has been depleted because of the war in Ukraine and sales mandated by Congress to raise revenue. Southwest is expanding out at DIA, and we'll get a look at the airline's new gates this afternoon. Southwest will have 16 new gates in the C concourse. The area will also have an outdoor patio, more dining options, and additional seating and charging stations. This is part of the airport's gate expansion project.
Passengers are going to notice that things are going to look different, and we don't want only those expansion areas to look bright, shiny, and new. We're also making a lot of good updates to our areas that have seen a lot of life, that have seen over 25 years of life. So we're really hoping that folks notice that we're trying to really take care of what we have and then add new things as well.
Southwest will start flying out of those gates next month.
It is a momentous day. It is your day.
CU Boulder is celebrating graduates today. The university held its first large graduation ceremony in 3 years out at Folsom Field this morning. The ceremony honored nearly 9,000 graduates from last fall and this spring. The Bureau of Land Management and other officials are meeting again tonight about expanding the off-highway vehicle program in the Sandwash Basin. This area is west of Craig in northwest Colorado. The Sandwash Basin is one of the few places where wild horses roam. Last night, the BLM said OHVs won't disrupt the horses, but horse advocates disagree with that sentiment, saying OHV riders don't stay in their designated areas. The Avs are back at Ball Arena tonight, hoping to take a commanding 2-game lead in their playoff series against the Predators. The Avs got the blowout win in Game 1, 7-2, but things did get a little bit chippy Tuesday night. The Avs had 22 penalty minutes, the Predators had 34. Gabe Landeskog went down hard during one of those fights, and Nate McKinnon got hit in the face. Coach Jared Bednar says the Avs know nothing good can come from getting involved in these kind of fights.
You have to play physical. You have to be able to push back, like I said, but you got to be disciplined. Like, we don't need to get involved in all the scrums after the whistle. Like, I mean, you have to stick up for yourself to a certain extent. But, you know, our guys have been instructed if we have the option to just skate away, then that's what we're going to do. This isn't about ego. It's about winning.
Yes, it is. And we'll have live reports from Ball Arena starting on Denver 7 News at 5 o'clock. Tonight's game starts at 7:30. The series then heads to Music City, Nashville for games on Saturday and Monday. Still ahead, start planning out your summer hiking trips. A popular 14er will require reservations again this year. And Cinco de Mayo celebrations are back in person, including a colorful part of Mexican culture.
It's important to the community that they not forget